Clarity is the foundation of all change. Before you can change your life, you must first define what that change looks like. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. In fact, the greatest obstacle for most people isn't laziness, lack of opportunity, or even fear its vagueness. When the picture of the future is blurry, the actions you take today will be weak. When the vision is sharp, the steps you take become confident, intentional, and filled with energy. That's the power of clarity. It's not a motivational concept, it's a practical necessity. Most people want better lives, but if you ask them what that looks like, they fumble. I want more money, they say, but how much more, by when? Doing what? I want to get fit, they add. But what's the goal, wait? What kind of body? Why that body? I want to be happy, they say. But what does happiness mean to them? The truth is, without a specific vision, the mind has no target to aim at, and without a target, there is no pursuit, only wishful thinking. Clarity brings power because it tells your mind where to go. Your brain is a goal-seeking machine. It's constantly scanning the environment for what you've trained it to look for. If you give it a cloudy signal, it produces scattered results. But when you give it a precise instruction, it begins working like a laser. That's when focus becomes easy, motivation becomes natural, and distractions start to fade. You no longer need to be pushed from the outside. You are pulled from the inside. But clarity doesn't come on its own. It's something you must work to create. It begins with reflection, honest, deep, sometimes uncomfortable reflection. What do you want your life to look like? Where are you right now? What's missing? What do you value most? What are you no longer willing to tolerate? These questions are the chisels that carve clarity from the stone of confusion. You have to sit with them, write them down, and revisit them often. Clarity is not a one-time event. It's a discipline. There's something remarkable that happens when you write your goals down. Not just think about them, not talk about them, asterisk, asterisk, write them down, asterisk, asterisk. Writing forces you to clarify your thoughts. It demands precision. It also creates commitment. A written goal becomes a contract with yourself. It tells your subconscious mind, this is real, this is important, let's get to work. You'd be amazed how many people go through life with dreams floating in their minds, but never take the time to turn them into structured plans. Don't be one of them. If you're serious about starting a new life, get serious about defining it in detail. Another dimension of clarity is emotional clarity. It's not enough to know asterisk what asterisk you want. You must know asterisk why asterisk you want it. The what gives direction, the why gives fuel. People give up not because their goals are impossible, but because they're emotionally disconnected from them. They set goals because they sound good or because someone else told them it was the right thing to do. That's not enough. Real change happens when the vision of your future creates emotion inside you. When it makes you feel something, urgency, passion, even discomfort, that's when it starts to stick. So ask yourself, why does this matter to me? What pain will I avoid by changing? What pleasure will I gain? What's at stake if I don't do it? Clarity also brings speed. When you know exactly where you're going, you don't waste time. You don't wander, overthink, or doubt your every move. You simply act. This is why two people can have the same 24 hours and completely different outcomes. One spends the day reacting to everything. The other spends it executing a plan. The difference isn't talent, it's clarity. The person with a clear direction always moves faster and gets further, even if they start behind. Clarity eliminates the noise. It helps you say no to the things that don't align, and yes to the ones that move the needle. Let's also talk about mental clarity. You can't build a new life with a cluttered mind. Overthinking, indecision, worry, these are enemies of progress. That's why clarity must also extend to your thoughts. You need to know what you believe, what values you live by, what principles guide your decisions. If your beliefs are all over the place, your actions will be too. Mental clarity comes from stillness, time away from distraction, time spent in thought, meditation, or solitude. When your inner world is in order, your outer world becomes easier to manage. People often say they're overwhelmed, but most of the time they're just unclear. Overwhelm is what happens when you're trying to do too much without knowing what actually matters. Clarity helps you prioritize. It gives you permission to ignore the unimportant. When you know what your life is about, you stop trying to live everyone else's version of it. You stop comparing, competing, and copying. You start creating. It's also important to understand that clarity evolves. The vision you have today may not be the one you'll have 5 years from now. That's okay. In fact, it's expected. As you grow, your desires mature, your goals shift, your priorities realign. What once excited you may now bore you. What once felt impossible may now be your daily routine. So don't get attached to an old version of your dream. Review it, adjust it, improve it. Keep it alive and relevant. There's a saying, the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. That's what life looks like without clarity. You chase one thing for a while, then switch to another, then another, until years pass and you've gone nowhere. But when you commit to a clear vision, when you pour your time, energy, and heart into a single direction, that's when momentum kicks in, that's when your results start compounding. It's also true that clarity attracts opportunity. When you are clear about who you are and what you're building, people respond to that energy. The right conversations show up, the right partnerships form, resources start flowing. Why? Because clarity creates confidence, and confidence is magnetic. People follow those who know where they're going, but they avoid those who seem unsure, confused, or lost. So if you want support, help, and collaboration, start by making your vision unmistakably clear. Clarity brings peace. You don't need to figure everything out overnight. You don't need to have all the answers, but you do need a compass, a direction, a path. When you have that, life feels less chaotic. You stop second guessing, you start trusting. You begin to live with intention, not just motion. And once you start moving with clarity, life becomes less about survival and more about significance. Take full responsibility, no excuses. This is the principle that separates those who rise from those who remain stuck. It's not about blame, and it's not about guilt. It's about power. The moment you take ownership of your life, regardless of what has happened in the past, is the moment you begin to take back control. Responsibility means you stop waiting for someone else to fix it. You stop hoping circumstances will change. You stop pointing fingers at your parents, your boss, the government, or bad luck. Instead, you turn inward and say, if it's going to change, I'm the one who has to change it. When you take responsibility, you begin to see things differently. Problems are no longer things that happen asterisk to asterisk you. They're things you now have the ability to respond to, and that word respond comes from the same root as responsibility. It's your ability to respond, not your ability to predict or prevent every challenge, but your ability to stand up, face it, and take action regardless of what comes. That's what separates a victim mindset from a leadership mindset. One says, "Why is this happening to me?" The other says, "What can I do about this?" It's easy to drift into blame. Blame is convenient. Blame lets you off the hook. It gives you a story to tell, a reason to explain why things are the way they are. But here's the problem. The more time you spend blaming, the less time you spend building. The more you point outward, the less progress you make inward. Every time you blame someone else, you hand them a piece of your power. And if you give away enough pieces, soon there's nothing left for you to work with. Taking full responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. Let's be clear about that. You may have been handed unfair circumstances. Life may have treated you harshly, people may have betrayed you, but while those events may not be your fault, what you do next is your responsibility. You don't get to choose all your circumstances, but you always choose your response. That's where your freedom lies. You may not be able to go back and rewrite the beginning of your story, but you can take control of the next chapter. And you do that by owning your role in the present. It's also important to understand that responsibility isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every day, you wake up and choose how you will interpret your reality. You choose how you speak to yourself. You choose the effort you give, the thoughts you nurture, the actions you take. If you don't like how your life looks, look at your patterns, look at your disciplines, look at the choices you've been making, not just the big ones, but the small, seemingly invisible ones you repeat every day. Those choices compound and they shape everything. There's a kind of quiet dignity that comes with responsibility. It doesn't shout, it doesn't boast, but it carries a certain weight. When you meet a person who has taken full ownership of their life, you can feel it. They're grounded, they don't complain much, they don't make excuses, they don't shift blame, they just do the work. They take the hit and keep going. They accept that life is sometimes unfair and still choose to rise above it. That kind of person earns respect, not just from others, but from themselves. Responsibility is what turns pain into progress. It allows you to take the worst things that happen to you and transform them into fuel. You stop asking, "Why me?" and you start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift in thinking is everything. Pain is inevitable, but whether that pain becomes your prison or your platform, that's your choice. Responsibility lets you turn setbacks into stepping stones. It lets you turn regret into resolve. Many people say they want a new life, but they don't want the burden of responsibility that comes with it. They want the reward without the risk, the success without the discipline, the change without the challenge. But it doesn't work like that. You can't outsource your growth. No one can do your push-ups for you. No one can build your mindset, change your habits, or make your choices. That work belongs to you and only you. And while that may seem daunting, it's actually liberating. Because once you realize it's all on you, you stop waiting and start creating. One of the most powerful things you can do is look in the mirror and say, "This is where I am, and it's on me to change it." No more hiding, no more pretending, no more waiting for the right time. Just radical honesty with yourself. That's the beginning of all transformation. You don't need to judge yourself harshly. You just need to be truthful. Truth is where growth begins, and responsibility is truth in action. Responsibility doesn't mean you won't fall. It doesn't mean you won't struggle. It means you won't stay down. You'll get up, evaluate, adapt, and try again. That's the mindset of a builder. Someone who builds a new life brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Not because it's easy, but because they've decided they're worth it. Because they've realized that no one is coming to save them, and that's not a sad truth. It's an empowering one. You don't need a rescuer. You need a reason, and responsibility gives you that reason. It's easy to romanticize change. We imagine the excitement of the new, the rush of success, the transformation we'll experience. But real change begins in the quiet space of responsibility. In the decision to stop deflecting and start directing. In the commitment to take ownership of your thoughts, your behaviors, your energy. That's the invisible work that leads to visible results. No applause. No recognition. Just you versus your old self every single day. You don't need to be perfect to take responsibility. You just need to be willing to admit where you've fallen short, willing to face the consequences of your choices, willing to do what needs to be done even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Responsibility is a kind of leadership, and the first person you must lead is yourself. When you do that consistently, everything else in your life begins to align. There's a moment in every person's life when they face a crossroads. They can either keep blaming, keep avoiding, keep pretending, or they can own it fully. No more stories, no more drama, just a calm, firm declaration. This is my life. I am the author now. From that place, even the hardest road becomes walkable, because now you're not reacting to life. You're shaping it, and that shift changes everything. Daily disciplines shape your destiny. Most people misunderstand success. They think it's a result of one grand event, one lucky break, or one perfect opportunity. But the truth is far simpler and far more demanding. Success is the result of small, consistent disciplines repeated over time. It's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, it's often invisible, but it is always powerful. What you do daily, not occasionally, creates the structure of your life. Disciplines are the invisible architects of your future. Every morning you get up early and read, every workout you complete, every healthy meal you eat, every dollar you save, every hour you invest into your craft. These are all bricks in the foundation of the life you are building. They may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they compound. The law of accumulation guarantees that what you do repeatedly gathers force. Like drops of water filling a bucket, small disciplines practiced daily will eventually overflow into success. The problem is that small disciplines are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. That's what makes them so deceptive. Skipping one workout doesn't ruin your health. Procrastinating one day doesn't destroy your goals. Spending a little extra once doesn't bankrupt you, but the danger lies in the repetition of neglect. Neglect is just discipline in reverse. It's what happens when you consistently make the easy choice, the comfortable choice, the lazy choice. It leads you down a path you never intended to walk, and one day you look up and wonder how you got there. The difference between success and failure is often no more than a handful of daily disciplines. Not talent, not luck, not connections, just a set of simple actions repeated long enough to create massive change. This is both the good news and the hard truth. The good news is you don't need to be extraordinary to succeed. You just need to be consistent. The hard truth is that consistency is harder than it sounds. It requires character. It requires focus. It requires doing the right thing when you don't feel like it. Discipline is the ability to give yourself a command and follow it. It's self-leadership. It means doing what you said you would do, long after the mood you said it in has faded. It means showing up for yourself every single day, whether the world notices or not. The payoff isn't immediate. That's what makes discipline difficult. It asks for faith. Faith in the process, faith in yourself, faith in the compound effect of effort. Most people give up too early because they don't see instant results. But the seed you plant today does not bear fruit tomorrow. It takes time, water, sunlight, and patience. Every discipline you practice builds self-respect. Each time you follow through on your word, you build trust with yourself. That trust becomes the foundation of your confidence. You stop needing motivation from outside sources because you begin to believe in your ability to act regardless of how you feel. That's when discipline becomes identity. You no longer try to be disciplined. You are disciplined, and that shift changes everything. Routines are where discipline lives. If you don't control your day will control you. Your calendar should reflect your priorities. If something matters to you, it should have a place in your daily schedule. Too many people rely on willpower instead of structure, but willpower is limited. Structure is sustainable. Build a daily routine that supports your goals, protects your energy, and eliminates unnecessary decisions. The fewer choices you have to make, the more energy you can devote to what matters most. Focus on mastering a few key disciplines rather than trying to do everything at once. Pick the vital few that create the greatest leverage. For some, that's journaling each morning to clear their thoughts. For others, it's spending 60 minutes learning a new skill. It could be meditating, exercising, writing, planning, selling, or studying. The specific action doesn't matter as much as the consistency. It's not about volume, it's about rhythm. You're not trying to win the day. You're trying to win the day repeatedly. Start small. Make your discipline so easy you can't say no. That's how momentum builds. Don't try to overhaul your entire life in a week. Begin with one change, lock it in, then build on it. Success is a staircase, not an elevator. Each small discipline is a step. The more steps you climb, the stronger your legs become. Soon, what once felt difficult becomes effortless. What once required willpower becomes automatic. That's the reward of consistency. Discipline over time turns into freedom. Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want whenever you want. That's chaos, not freedom. True freedom comes from the structure that discipline creates. It gives you energy, clarity, confidence, and results. It allows you to take control of your life instead of drifting through it. People often resist discipline because they think it's restrictive, but the undisciplined life is far more limiting. It leads to regret, confusion, and lack of progress. Discipline gives you choices, it expands your potential, it builds a life you're proud of. There's a connection between discipline and character. Every time you keep your promise to yourself, you strengthen your integrity. You prove to yourself that you can be counted on. You become someone who does hard things on purpose. That self-image bleeds into every part of your life. You carry yourself differently. You make better decisions. You attract better opportunities. Why? Because the world respects those who respect themselves, and self-respect is earned through discipline. You will have days when you slip. Everyone does. Discipline doesn't mean perfection. It means resilience. When you fall, you get up faster. You don't let one bad day become a bad week. You don't punish yourself. You correct yourself. That mindset shift is critical. Progress isn't about never failing. It's about reducing the time between failure and recovery. That's the power of discipline. It shortens the gap. It strengthens your bounce back. The beauty of discipline is that it creates evidence. It gives you proof. Proof that you are moving. Proof that you are changing. Proof that you are serious. And that proof builds belief. Every day you show up, even in a small way, is a vote for the person you want to become. Those votes add up. They accumulate into a reputation, with yourself and with others. Soon, you no longer need to talk about what you're doing. Your results will speak for you. Your life becomes the loudest testimony to the power of daily discipline. Upgrade your environment for growth. One of the most underestimated truths about personal transformation is that success is not only about internal drive, but also about external influence. You can have all the ambition, vision, and work ethic in the world, but if your environment is working against you, it will be like trying to sail against the wind. Environment shapes behavior more than most people are willing to admit. It pulls at your habits, molds your thinking, and sets the tone for your beliefs and expectations. If you want to change your life, start by changing what surrounds you. This includes your physical space, your social circle, the information you consume, and the culture you place yourself in daily. Your surroundings either support your goals or sabotage them. They either lift you or drain you. A clean space, an organized desk, a room filled with inspiration. These things matter. They're not decoration. They're direction. A cluttered space often leads to a cluttered mind, and that fog makes it hard to think clearly or act decisively. Start by looking at your physical environment. Is it aligned with the person you want to become? If you're trying to be healthy, but your kitchen is filled with junk food, your environment is working against you. If you're trying to become more focused, but your phone is filled with notifications and distractions, your environment is silently pulling you away from your goals. You can have discipline, but why rely on willpower alone when you can design your space to make the right choice the easy choice? Set your environment up to win. Put tools of progress in sight. Remove temptations that slow you down. But more important than the physical is the social environment. The people around you shape your identity. Humans are wired for connection and imitation. Without realizing it, you begin to adopt the behaviors, language, and mindset of those you spend time with. If you're around complainers, you start to complain. If you're around people who make excuses, excuses start to feel normal. But if you're around builders, thinkers, dreamers, those who challenge you to grow, you start to stretch beyond your limitations. You start to see yourself differently. One of the greatest growth hacks available is simply to spend time with people who are ahead of you, people whose habits you admire, whose values you respect, whose results you want to replicate. Being in their presence sharpens you, it raises your standards, it forces you to confront where you've been settling, and often it introduces you to new ways of thinking and living that you never considered before. Growth-minded people don't just inspire you. They challenge your comfort zone by living outside of it themselves. But this kind of environment won't fall into your lap. You have to seek it out. You have to be intentional about who you let into your life. This may mean limiting time with negative influences, even if they are familiar. It may mean distancing yourself from relationships built on mediocrity, drama, or stagnation, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. If someone is constantly pulling you backwards while you're trying to move forward, you have to protect your momentum. Not everyone belongs in every chapter of your story. The digital environment you place yourself in also matters. In today's world, you're not just influenced by the people physically around you, but by the content you consume daily. Every podcast, video, book, social media feed it's either planting seeds of growth or cluttering your mind with noise. Be intentional about the information diet you feed your brain. Unfollow accounts that distract or discourage you. Fill your mind with ideas that stretch you. Read content that aligns with the life you want to live. Watch people who demonstrate the mindset and principles you want to embody. Culture is another piece of your environment. Every group has a culture, a set of unspoken rules, beliefs, and norms. Your workplace, your home, your community, your friend group, they all have a culture. Some cultures encourage ambition, responsibility, and excellence. Others reward passivity, gossip, and low standards. You have to ask yourself, what kind of culture am I immersed in? And more importantly, what kind of culture am I contributing to? Because the environment isn't just something you consume, it's something you help create. You are both a product and a producer of your surroundings. Environment also influences your energy. There are places and people that make you feel more alive, more focused, more engaged. And there are places and people that leave you drained, anxious, or numb. Pay attention to those cues. Your energy is a resource, and if you're constantly leaking it because of where you are or who you're with, you'll have nothing left to pursue what matters. Protect your energy by curating environments that feed your spirit instead of exhausting it. Sometimes upgrading your environment means physical relocation. A new city, a new job, a new space. These can be catalysts for growth when your current surroundings no longer support your vision. Other times, it's simply a matter of rearranging what you already have, creating a dedicated workspace at home, turning off the TV and turning on an audiobook, swapping a night out with gossip for a dinner with mentors. Environment doesn't have to be expensive to be effective, it just has to be intentional. A powerful exercise is to audit your environment. Walk through your day, hour by hour, and ask yourself, is this space helping me become who I want to be? Are the people around me pushing me forward or pulling me back? Is the media I consume strengthening my focus or distracting my mind? If the answer is unclear or negative, make a change. Don't wait until it's convenient. Don't wait for permission. Your growth depends on it. Success leaves clues, and one of the clearest clues is that high performers design their environment for success. They build systems around them that support discipline. They invest in relationships that expand their perspective. They remove friction from their routines. They surround themselves with excellence until it becomes normal. When you do the same, your life begins to elevate almost automatically. It becomes harder to fall back into old habits because your surroundings no longer support them. The power of your environment lies in its ability to either reinforce your old identity or support your new one. Every time you walk into a room, every time you engage with a group, every time you open your phone, you're either reinforcing the version of yourself you're trying to leave behind or aligning with the version you're trying to become. You cannot afford to be casual about this. Your environment is not neutral. It is shaping you whether you notice it or not. The question is, will you shape it back? Courage is more important than confidence. Most people wait to feel confident before they begin, but that's a trap. Confidence is not the starting point. It's the result. It's what comes after you take action, after you face the uncertainty, after you've stepped through the fear. What you need in the beginning is not confidence. What you need is courage. Courage to start when you're unsure, to speak up when your voice shakes, to move forward even when the outcome is unclear. Courage is the spark that lights the fire. Confidence is the warmth that comes later. There's a misconception that successful people are fearless, that they were born with a special kind of certainty that allowed them to act boldly. But the truth is far more grounded. They were afraid too. The only difference is that they moved forward anyway. That movement, those first shaky steps, created experience. And experience is the soil where confidence grows. Confidence is memory. It's remembering that you've done hard things before, that you've overcome, that you've stretched, that you didn't break. But before any of that is possible, you must first summon the courage to begin. Courage is action in the presence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear make your decisions for you. Everyone feels fear. It's biological. It's wired into our nervous system to protect us from harm. But today, fear shows up not just in life, threatening situations. It shows up in conversations, in goals, in self-expression. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of being seen trying and not succeeding. These fears are real, but they are rarely dangerous. Most of them are social fears, emotional fears, not physical threats. And yet, they often stop us more effectively than any physical barrier. When you realize that fear is part of the process, not a signal to stop, you start to gain power over it. You stop waiting for it to go away and instead learn to act alongside it. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means doing it afraid. You feel the discomfort, you feel the doubt, and you move forward anyway. That's where growth lies, not in the absence of resistance, but in the choice to face it directly. People often confuse preparation with courage. They think if they just learn more, plan more, prepare more, then the fear will vanish. But fear doesn't disappear through thinking. It shrinks through doing. You can read every book, watch every video, talk to every expert, and still be afraid. At some point, action is the only remedy. Action is what builds evidence. And once you have evidence, confidence becomes easier. You start to say, I've done this before, I can do it again. But without courage, that evidence never gets created. One of the most important things to understand is that courage can be small. It doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes courage is simply saying no when it would be easier to say yes. Sometimes it's starting the project no one sees. Sometimes it's walking into a room where you feel like you don't belong and staying anyway. Sometimes it's being honest, with yourself, with others, about what you really want. Courage isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Every act of courage strengthens your inner foundation. It teaches your brain that discomfort is survivable. It creates new patterns, new associations. Instead of linking discomfort with danger, you start linking it with growth. You begin to see resistance not as a signal to retreat, but as a sign that you're on the edge of something meaningful. That edge, that discomfort, is where all transformation happens. But you don't get there unless you're willing to walk into it. Courage is a decision. It's not something you wait for. It's not something you stumble into. It's something you choose deliberately over and over. In the face of doubt, in the face of imperfection, in the face of criticism, you choose to act, you choose to try, you choose to move, and each time you do, you expand what's possible for you. You stretch your identity. You prove to yourself that you're not defined by fear. That's how you grow into a new version of yourself. Courage also requires vulnerability. It means being seen in your raw, unpolished form. It means trying before you feel ready. It means risking failure, risking judgment, risking discomfort. But that vulnerability is what makes the process real. You cannot fake courage. You can fake confidence. You can pretend, posture, or talk big. But courage is honest. It's exposed, and that's what makes it powerful. Because when you act with courage, you align with truth. You stop performing and start participating in your life for real. There's also a connection between courage and purpose. When you have a strong enough reason, when you're clear about what matters to you, courage becomes easier. You still feel fear, but it's outweighed by something greater. That greater thing, a mission, a value, a goal, pulls you through. It gives the fear context. Without a clear purpose, fear feels overwhelming. With purpose, fear becomes just another part of the path, something to manage, not something to surrender to. You don't need to be fearless to succeed. You need to be brave. Bravery is what allows you to take the first step when no one claps. Bravery is what lets you try when you don't know if it'll work. Bravery is what keeps you going when you're the only one who believes. And every act of bravery teaches you something about yourself, that you are stronger than you thought, more capable than you imagined, more resilient than you assumed. But you only learn that by doing. Your future does not depend on you being the most talented, the smartest, or the most prepared. It depends on your willingness to act in the face of uncertainty, to show up without guarantees, to try even when the outcome is unknown. That's the real test. Anyone can move forward when the path is smooth and the result is secure. But those who build meaningful lives are the ones who step forward without knowing, without perfect conditions, without applause. The courage to begin is the difference between potential and progress. Potential is what's possible. Progress is what's real. You can live your whole life full of potential and never see it realized if courage doesn't take the wheel. No one will give you permission. No one will pave the road. No one will guarantee your success. That's not how this works. It starts with you deciding to do it anyway, even if you're not ready, especially if you're not ready. Because readiness is a myth. You don't get ready and then begin. You begin, and in the doing, you become ready. Courage has a compounding effect. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. The more risks you take, the more resilient you become. The more fears you face, the less control they have, and little by little, the boundaries of your comfort zone begin to stretch. You start to operate in a new space, a space where you feel alive, a space where growth is normal. A space where you trust yourself more than your fear. That space isn't built by chance. It's built by courage, one decision at a time. Your past is a lesson, not a life sentence. One of the biggest obstacles to starting a new life is the weight people carry from their previous chapters. Regret, shame, guilt, failure, disappointment. These emotions have a way of gripping the mind and convincing it that the past defines what's possible for the future. But that's not how change works. The past is not a prophecy. It is not a prison, it is a teacher. What you've lived through, what you've endured, what you've overcome. None of it was wasted. It was preparation. It was instruction. It was the raw material that now gives you perspective, wisdom, and strength. Everyone has a past. Some parts are beautiful, others are painful. Some are full of victories, others full of mistakes. But the key is not to erase it or pretend it didn't happen. The key is to reframe it, to look back not as a judge, but as a student. The past is a classroom, and your life is the curriculum. If you can extract the lessons from your experiences, you give meaning to your pain. You give purpose to your struggles. You turn your history into a tool instead of a chain. Growth requires reflection, but not obsession. Reflection means you pause and ask, what did that season teach me? What did that failure reveal about my patterns or beliefs? What did that relationship show me about my values, my standards, or my boundaries? What did that loss teach me about letting go? What did that mistake teach me about humility or preparation? These are productive questions. They bring clarity, they turn hindsight into insight, but when you obsess, you don't ask questions. You make declarations, you say things like, I'll never recover, I always mess things up, I'm just not good enough. That's not reflection, that's self-sabotage disguised as honesty. One of the greatest skills you can develop is the ability to forgive yourself, not because what happened was okay, but because you're ready to grow. You cannot build a new life while carrying the shame of the old one. At some point, you have to release yourself. You have to say, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, and now I know better. And now I will do better. This is how you reclaim your power. You stop defining yourself by who you were and start defining yourself by who you're becoming. People often stay stuck not because they can't move forward, but because they keep reliving the same story. They replay the same moments, they cling to old identities, they hold on to what's familiar, even if it's painful, because it's known. But healing and progress require interruption. You have to disrupt the narrative. You have to say that chapter is over. That version of me was real, but it's not the only version. I get to evolve, I get to rewrite, I get to start again. Not because I'm ignoring the past, but because I'm choosing not to be ruled by it. There's a difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering brings understanding. Reliving brings paralysis. When you remember, you honor what happened, you extract wisdom, and you move forward. When you relive, you anchor yourself to moments that are no longer happening but continue to influence your present decisions. That's how people get caught in cycles. They're not living new lives. They're reacting to old memories. And as long as you react to the past, you give it control over the present. You let it steer the wheel even though it belongs in the rear-view mirror. You are not the sum of your worst moments. You are not defined by your failures, your heartbreaks, or your low points. Those may be parts of your story, but they are not your entire identity. The danger lies in taking a moment and turning it into a label. I failed becomes I'm a failure. I was hurt becomes I'm unlovable. I was rejected becomes I'm not worthy. These labels are heavy and they stick, but they are also lies. Lies you believed when you were vulnerable, lies you repeated until they felt true. But truth is not based on repetition. It's based on reflection. And when you reflect honestly, you begin to see that growth was always there, buried underneath the pain. Sometimes the lesson in your past is not just about what happened to you, but how you responded. Maybe you see now that you settled, that you avoided, that you lashed out, that you gave up too soon. That's okay. That realization is a gift, because awareness creates choice. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. But once you see it clearly, you can decide differently. You can heal the pattern. You can choose new behaviors. You can build new responses. That's what maturity is. Not perfection, but growth. Not immunity to pain, but resilience in the face of it. There's also beauty in scars. Scars are proof that you've healed, that you walked through something and came out the other side. They are reminders that you are capable of enduring. But scars are only visible when you stop hiding them. When you bring them into the light, when you use them to connect rather than isolate. Your story, no matter how broken it feels, can be a bridge for others, but only if you first use it as a foundation for yourself. Every season of your life has value, even the ones you wish never happened, even the ones you don't talk about, even the ones that brought you to your knees. They shaped you. They carved depth into your character. They gave you insight others don't have. They made you more human, more compassionate, more real. Don't discount those seasons just because they were hard. Hard doesn't mean worthless. In fact, the most meaningful growth often comes from the hardest ground. Time alone does not heal wounds. Healing comes from how you spend the time, from the choices you make after the pain, from the decision to learn rather than linger, from the willingness to feel instead of suppress, from the openness to talk, to write, to process. Healing is not passive, it's active, it's work, and sometimes it's the hardest work you'll ever do, but it's worth it, because healing creates space for something new. And that space is where a new life begins. The past is not something you run from. It's something you rise from. You take its weight and you use it to build strength. You take its silence and you turn it into a voice. You take its chaos and you use it to create clarity. That's what it means to learn. That's what it means to grow. That's what it means to transform. Not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to let it define who you are. You've carried the past long enough. Now it's time to carry the lesson, and that lesson will guide every step forward.